wgol.net, and make sure you tell them that you heard about them on the Valley Labor Report.
WVNN. You're listening to the Valley Labor Report with David Story and Jacob Morrison.
The time has come for America to hear the truth.
We are going to stand with them, and not only are we going to fight for their rights, but we're going to stand up for our rights here in our state, in our homes, and in our community.
One day longer, one day stronger. One day longer, one day stronger.
Because the future of labor's rights in the United States of America is not going to be decided in Congress. It's not going to be decided on talk radio, and it sure is not going to be decided on Fox News.
For the union makes us strong. Solidarity forever. Solidarity forever.
Good morning, Tennessee Valley. This is the Valley Labor Report. My name is Jacob Morrison, here with my co-host and fellow agitator, David Story. It is Saturday, July 11th, 2020, and we're broadcasting live online and on the radio on WVNN in the Huntsville, Decatur, Athens listening area from Athens, Alabama. A recording of this program will play tomorrow, Sunday, July 12th, 2020, on the great WGOL in Russelville, Alabama. Today, we're talking with Warren Tidwell, an organizer for longtime sponsor of the show, Hometown Action, about his work, the work of Hometown Action, and their week of action that they're planning next week. We will also talk about some bad Supreme Court decisions that are masquerading as religious freedom, but are really just giving the boss more freedom to exploit workers. All this and more on today's Valley Labor Report. Thanks for tuning in, folks. We appreciate your time today. If you want to see what we're up to throughout the week, get our snide quips about the news of the day, then you should follow us on social media. We're on Facebook at facebook.com/Valley Labor Report. We're on Twitter at Labor Reporters. I'm on Twitter at JacobM_AL. David is on Twitter at Radical Unionist. That's spelled RADICL Unionist. If you missed part of the show and want to go back and watch it later, you can search YouTube for The Valley Labor Report and subscribe to our channel. You can go back and watch the full show there, and we also clip segments throughout the week. And if you appreciate our work and want to help keep us on the air, consider throwing us a couple dollars a month on patreon.com/The Valley Labor Report. So on to the interview. Like I said, we've got in studio with us today Warren Tidwell. He is the lead organizer, which is a power-building collective here in Alabama fighting for working people. They've also been a sponsor of the show since our launch, so we're extremely happy to have the opportunity to talk with them today about their work. Before that, though, Warren, could you tell us a little bit about yourself? You know, you were born and raised right here in Alabama, but here you are, a community organizer for this kind of, kind of left-wing type group. So what happened? What happened here?
Welcome in. Welcome in, brother.
I'm glad to be here. Well, I tell you, I come from rural Walker County, Alabama. Born and raised there, spent most of my life there, and I now live in East Alabama. My grandfather worked in the coal mines. There's actually a monument in the mining camp with his name on it, the mining camp where my father was born. And my grandmother's worked in the textile mill. You know, I have coal dust and cotton lint in my DNA. It's where I come from. I grew up running shops, auto repair shops. I'm very definition of blue collar. And I've spent a lot of time organizing disaster relief efforts at the grassroots level. And what that taught me was the power of people working together. Race, class, all of that went out the window when that happened. And so I did that for 20 years as I realized that's what I was doing. Right. But at the same time, it gave me an interesting view into the problems of the state and the potential of the people here when we do work together.
Yeah.
Well, appreciate you coming in. So can you tell us a little bit about Hometown Action, the organization? Like, how did the group get started? What do they before we start talking about what y'all have got going on this week, just tell us a little bit about Hometown Action. How did it get started? What do y'all do?
Justin Vest started Hometown Action. He is only from Alexander City, Alabama, and moved back here from Maryland after school to start an organization that, we want to focus on sustainable communities built through working class organizing and, leadership development at the local and state level to create opportunities for people in these small towns that wouldn't necessarily be there before. I often told Justin that was quite courageous of them to do that, because it has created an opportunity for me to tap into the work that Hometown Action is doing, because I share that passion of the organization of working with and for working class people. So over the last 2 to 3 years, came in as a volunteer for a while. We were able to get some grant funding to bring me on as a staffer, and I've been able to apply some of my talents through the organization that way, and tap into some really neat things that we've got going on, specifically related to mutual aid to the COVID-19 response. We have, through our C3 under the umbrella of Hometown Action, Hometown Organizing Project, a mask-making project that started in East Alabama to get a small amount of masks made for people who were affected by the tornado in Beauregard back in March of 2019. There were 23 people killed there, unfortunately. As of now, our volunteers and organizers throughout the state have had a hand in making and distributing more than 60,000 masks from all the way up here in Huntsville to East Alabama, Montgomery, Tuscaloosa, meatpacking plants, a lot of the places, a lot of the working class folks who aren't getting the support of the owners of the companies that they need.
Yep.
We've had to step in and take care of some of that, and it's just been wildly successful because of the people who have stepped up and volunteered to take part in that.
And it's, it's important to point out and give props to Justin, because a lot of times we have some well-educated people in the state, and there's not a lot of opportunities for them overall. And the fact that he stepped up and come back home, and built this organization, grassroots organization, to help empower all of us, in the state. I think it's, Hometown Action is definitely come to bat, supporting us financially and supporting us through mutual aid and sharing contacts and things like that. So him and Kathleen and you as well, there's a lot of great people over there.
I think that's a part of what will help change things here is we've got to have a lot of young folks coming home and helping out here and believing in the potential of these small towns and the people and the working class in these small towns.
Yep. That's the only way we're going to build opportunity in the state, is for people that actually build opportunity in the state, not to go outside and try to seek fame and fortune. There's nothing wrong with the fame and fortune, but we've all got roots here. Let's keep it there. That's
right.
Kind of my opinion on it.
And we were talking before we went on the air about some of the problems that ostensibly left. I mean, it doesn't even necessarily have to be that, but like folks like us have with organizing in the South, because a lot of people that ostensibly have similar beliefs as us, they look at the South in a very classist way, and they look at us like a bunch of hicks who don't know any better, and they've got to be civilized, and they look at us like a pity project that they feel so bad for us, or they just outright hate us almost. I was talking about this one person that shared something. It was literally just a picture of poor white people, and they were like, "Oh, look at these stupid racist folks." And like, there was nothing in the picture and this is an ostensibly like progressive, liberal, enlightened person. And what y'all are doing is so important, because this is rural, southern, small town, like roots deep here in Alabama. This is Alabama folks helping Alabama folks. I mean, that's really great to me. I like seeing that.
And I think another important aspect of the work that I find that I'm really enthusiastic about with Hometown Action is the focus on not only the working class, but people of color, LGBTQ plus community, and women. And that is a lot. It's a most inhospitable environment. I often say we organize on the frontier of these things, but someone has to do it, and it has to begin somewhere. So to be a part of that effort is something I'm really appreciative of. I feel it's a privilege on my part to be a part of that. And the opportunities in the South are here. It's a two-front battle, as we discussed before, fighting for things here that we want to see, but also convincing people outside of the South that these areas cannot be abandoned. This is what happens when we abandon them. That they become these very red areas. I mean, these very Republican areas and very conservative areas. And we need to be out there just talking to the people. And that simple thing is going to begin a lot of change here.
Yeah. And that's one of the things that actually brought me into the Hometown Action family was about, I don't know, it was 3 or 4 years ago. Somebody had shared a post. That was before I knew Kathleen, Justin, or anybody. Had shared a post with a lot of your folks out there supporting the LGBT community plus community somewhere in Montgomery. And, and I just thought, wow, I did not have any clue. And I've got several gay friends. There's a lot of folks around here. They get stigmatized. And even though, like most of the folks that I know, don't actively demean them, they don't go out and support them either, because it's kind of like, I don't want to be supportive of them because everybody might think I'm gay. Well, but y'all are taking that to a different level and showing that, you can be a redneck. You can be from Alabama and still be gay and you can be straight and love your gay brothers and sisters.
Well, that's the thing about it. For me personally, on a personal level, we're all human beings. And my work, I approach that from that standpoint first. And so I think the opportunity is not only that to tell people that, but to also empower people, to let them know that you're not alone here in this state, that we're here to work with, support you, and be there for you any way that we can in these small towns and rural communities where people often have to hide who they are and not be there.
Yeah. Right. Yep. And you're not going to talk down to them. You're not going to make them feel less than for their education or lack thereof, or Southern accent or lack thereof. You're just like meeting folks where they're at, affirming them in who they are, and saying like, we're going to help each other moving forward. We're going to stand in solidarity with one another and help make each other's lives better.
Yeah, and make them feel like a human being.
Yeah.
I mean, because that's all anybody wants to be treated like.
At the very least, we all deserve that.
Exactly.
Exactly. Least.
Right. So, Warren, thank you for coming in. We're going to, on the other side of the break, Hometown Action has a week of action that they're going to be starting next week. So on the other side of this break, we're going to be talking about that, what they're fighting against, what they're fighting for, what the specific actions that they are taking next week are, and how folks can join and help Hometown Action in this weekend. So stay tuned. You are listening to the Valley Labor Report.
You're listening to the Valley Labor Report with David Story and Jacob Morrison.
The attorneys at Maples, Tucker, and Jacobs have stood with the working people of Alabama for over 40 years, providing skilled legal representation for your workplace injury claim. It can be a scary time, but the attorneys at Maples, Tucker, and Jacobs have the experience to guide you through the process to make sure that you and your family are properly taken care of and your rights are protected. If you need help, call the attorneys at Maple, Tucker, and Jacobs at 855-9333 or visit online at www.mtandj.com. No representation is made that the quality of legal services is greater than the quality of legal services provided by other law firms.
All workers deserve fair wages, affordable health care, and a retirement plan that enables them to retire with dignity. All workers deserve to have a say about the terms and conditions of their employment, not just the bosses. With the Machinist Union's over 600,000 members having our back, Local Lodge 44 in Decatur, Alabama has been serving workers' interests for over 20 years. Our members have the best health insurance in the area with zero deductible plans. We set the bar for pay in the area with over $40 an hour rates, consistently averaging the highest non-college degree jobs in North Alabama with some of the best retirement plans in the industry. We can do the same for you. Together, we remain united, raising our voices to ensure justice on the job and service in the community. The Machinist Union is a true Southern union founded in Atlanta in 1888. We have been serving members' needs for 132 years. The longevity of our union proves our dedication and loyalty to the working class. The Machinist Union isn't just for machinists. We represent workers in government, healthcare, auto workers, aerospace workers, transportation workers, the defense industry, and woodworking. Our members even build the iconic Harley-Davidson motorcycles. If you're ready to get serious about better benefits and wages, if you want to have a voice in your workplace with over 600,000 members to back you up, call or email us today at 256-286-3704 or organize at iamaw44.org.
Here in Huntsville, federal employees are an invaluable part of the nation's defense, offering unmatched expertise in engineering and technology and as stewards of taxpayer dollars. What we ask for in return is to be treated with fairness, dignity, and respect. The American Federation of Government Employees, AFGE Local 1858, is a union of working people looking out for each other, making sure that we're treated right. To inquire about joining or to learn more, call 256-876-4880.
WVNN. Depend on it.
Good morning, Tennessee Valley. This is the Valley Labor Report. My name is Jacob Morrison, here with my co-host David Story. In the studio with us, we have Warren Tidwell, the lead organizer from Hometown Action, joining us all the way from Auburn, Alabama. Thank you for driving up this morning.
Him and his family.
Yeah,
thank them all.
That's a long...
Kid out in the car sleeping. I feel for you, brother.
Drive. That's a long drive. So we appreciate you making the trip out here. But I mentioned before we went to the break, y'all have a week of action that is starting this week. So just walk us through that. What is the thing that y'all are fighting against? What are you fighting for here? And what are the things that you are doing to fight in this week of action?
Hometown Action, in partnership with national organization People's Action, is calling for a week of action, a lot of action there, related to what we are calling the People's Bailout. And what that ties to is the response to this COVID-19 pandemic has been inadequate, to say the absolute least. And especially at the, for the average citizen resident of this state and this country. And so we've seen billions of dollars go to corporations in this country to bail out these companies, but very little is being talked about or done for long-term sustainable help for the people of this country. So what it does is it is calling for very specific things. Number one, health care guaranteed throughout this pandemic for people in dealing with it. And what we're seeing is that's just, of course, we've talked about it, that we can't even expand Medicaid in this state. But the call for that is vital because at this point in time, we can't even see our way through the beginning of this, regardless of the light at the end of the tunnel. Recurring cash payments would also be a part of that. And what that looks like is that keeps from sacrificing workers and other vulnerable populations to this. And in Auburn and a lot of small southern towns, and what I'm seeing, we're going to lose college football season to me is a foregone conclusion. It's not going to happen. That is a multi-million-dollar impact to our small town there. That's going to trickle down, and the working class folks are going to be the ones who are most affected by that. Yep. And so we need a massive response at the federal level to that. Along with that, a federal jobs program, specifically green jobs, sustainable jobs. The unemployment levels, and we're not talking about, it's like we're just pretending none of this is going on. As a people, it's like this virus isn't real, or these problems aren't as bad as they seem.
I do want to emphasize, like, when folks hear, these problems aren't as bad as they seem. You mentioned that, like, when folks hear people complaining about college football not being, not happening, like that. I just want to that's a big deal
catastrophic.
for the people in Auburn, for the people in Tuscaloosa.
Economy.
Like here in Huntsville, it's going to be like, oh man, I'm bummed I don't get to see Alabama play football on Saturday. But for local economies that are in these colleges, that's a big deal. So I do want to emphasize that for the folks that aren't like in the sports community. Like that's a big deal.
And that's something that I often have to explain, because outside of that, a lot of towns, Tuscaloosa and other towns have diversified a little bit in their workforce, but what we have in Auburn and East Alabama is we're in between Kia and Hyundai. So a lot of our suppliers are third-tier suppliers to the automotive industry, and what is one of the first things that people stop buying when the economy goes bad? New cars. So this is something that is looking like it's going to be a ripple effect for a long, ongoing time. So this week of action, to find out more about how you can get involved in this, number one, contact your senators. You can go to hometownaction.org. There's ways to get involved there. You can sign up. There's some ways for you to learn how to get involved with the organization and helping to push this. Because we can do this. If we can give billions of dollars to these corporations to prop them up time and time again, a lot of the younger generation are seeing that. They're saying, you're telling me we can't help our people, yet we are giving billions of dollars to these corporations. Right. This failure of leadership from the beginning to respond to this COVID-19 pandemic is going to needs swift and severe action, and now. And so that's where the week of action comes from.
Yeah. And it's worth pointing out the money that needs to flow into these unemployed places. There's a lot of folks like myself considered essential workers. Almost everybody's considered an essential worker now, but the pandemic isn't going away. It's increasing. I mean, I'm watching it daily in the state of Alabama, and it's going through the roof. People are going to start getting laid off again. There's a lot of people that still laid off. There's a lot of people, servers, service industry folks that are absolutely struggling. The only thing that's getting them through right now is this added benefit to their unemployment.
Right.
Anybody that thinks that this is some kind of handout needs to recognize, if you support small businesses, you need to support unemployment benefits continuing, because that is the only way these small businesses in your community continue to operate, is if these people that are unemployed can continue spending money at the same rate that they always have. Whenever they quit spending money, all these businesses is relying on that extra. They not to even consider the CARES Act where the businesses got money, but just the money that the workers that's unemployed right now are spending in the community is the only thing that's keeping America afloat.
Right, and you mentioned that a lot of folks like have doubts about how serious this is, and you mentioned, and this made me think about it again, but this is something that I've said multiple times. You mentioned there was a tornado that killed 3 people, and like the 2011 tornadoes, how many people did that kill? 12. People still, I can't remember, but people still talk about the April 27th, 2011 tornadoes. That is still,
it was hundreds throughout the state.
Hundreds died?
Yeah, it's a generational outbreak, and yes, it affected a great deal of the state.
And so many more people from that have died from the COVID-19 in Alabama. So many more people than have died in any single tornado, and folks are acting like, oh, this isn't real. Just think about that. Like, if a tornado kills a dozen people or 24 people, it's news for weeks, and if it kills more than that, you remember it for the rest of your life. Okay? It's real and it's not going away, and we've got to think about how the government can help people, how we can force the government to help folks get through this.
A lot of people like to talk about support small business. Well, the first thing that's going to be the mom and pops.
Yep.
Right.
Exactly. And that's of course very sad. That's of course going to lead to more loss of jobs, and I fear it's going to be a spiral. And so that's what we're seeing is as these cases increase and our hospitals are filling up, we're seeing the statistics are there. And we haven't even gotten to cold and flu season yet. Right. And so
schools hadn't opened
right now is there's and of course, there's so much of that we have to worry about. But yeah, at the basis level, we need to take care of our people. Yep. And that's what the People's Bailout is about and the week of action.
And the week of action. And that's the biggest thing is we talked about it in the break. We got about 10 seconds left, but that's the biggest thing. People have become so apathetic about contacting their representatives. Look, folks, these are the people that represent you. Call them. Okay. Email them. It don't take but 30 seconds to call and make your voice heard.
You can
So
go
that week of action's important.
That's right. hometownaction.org, and you can find out more about it.
All right. Thanks, Warren. We appreciate you coming from Auburn. Thank you so much for coming in. Folks, stay tuned. You're listening to the Valley Labor Report.
Huntsville's #1 news, talk, and weather station. WVNN Athens. WVNN FM Trinity. A Cumulus station. It's 10 o'clock.
Sentence commuted. Marines infected. I'm Christopher Cruz. Roger Stone won't be going to prison on Tuesday to begin a 40-month sentence. Correspondent Sarah Murray has reaction from President Trump's longtime friend.
The president did intervene on Friday, and here is Stone describing his conversation with Trump.
He said, you understand, I have the option, I have the authority to either grant a pardon or commute your sentence. And that in accepting a pardon, you are exceptionally accepting guilt.
Now, President Trump and Roger Stone are insistent that Stone did not get a fair shake at trial, but even Attorney General Bill Barr has said the prosecution was righteous. As for Democrats, they are pointing to the president intervening in this case as an indication that he has no respect for the justice system.
House Speaker Nancy Pelosi this morning called the president's intervention an act of staggering corruption. There are reports this morning that 60 U.S. Marines have tested positive for the coronavirus. They're stationed on 2 bases on the southern Japanese island of Okinawa. Another record day of new coronavirus cases in the U.S. yesterday, more than 66,000. Correspondent Polo Sandoval this morning says one concern.
Amid ongoing reopenings, Florida continues to grapple with skyrocketing daily COVID numbers and hospitalizations. In hot zone Miami-Dade County, the test positivity rate surpassed 33% this week.
Tropical storm Faye has been downgraded, but not before she drenched a large part of the Northeast, says meteorologist Allison Chinchar.
By later on today, this system will already be into Canada, so it's going to move out rather quickly. But before it does, it's still got a pretty decent amount of rain to dump across states like New York, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Vermont, even areas of Massachusetts and Connecticut.
A couple from California will plead guilty to paying $250,000 to get their daughter into the University of Southern California as a fake volleyball recruit. I'm Christopher Cruz.
Ad sponsored by Open Jar Concepts. Attention, this is an important message for anyone that has been diagnosed with cancer after being exposed to Roundup or other weed killers. The Internal Agency for Research on Cancer warned that overexposure to Roundup and other weed killers may increase the risk of developing non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. Monsanto, the manufacturer of Roundup, may have known that Roundup and other weed killers were likely linked to organ damage and cancer. This information was hidden from the public as proprietary trade secret since 1981, and Monsanto may have failed to warn of the potential risk of cancer. If you or a loved one has been diagnosed with cancer after being exposed to Roundup or other weed killers, you may be entitled to significant compensation. Call us now at 800-462-2033. Our network of attorneys are ready to fight for you. You'll pay nothing unless there's a recovery in your favor. Call now for a free consultation at 800-462-2033. You must protect your legal rights. Call 800-462-2033. Again, 800-462-2033.
Ours are the first generations to feel the effects of climate change and the last to be able to do anything about it. The window to meet this historic challenge is closing. We're already losing our lives and livelihoods. Millions have already been impacted by climate change. We can passively accept this fate, or we can join together and take back our power. If we so choose, our best days are ahead. We have a legacy of coming together to face crises that threaten the very ideals of our nation, from the horrors of slavery to the depths of the Great Depression, from the spread of fascism during World War II to the rise of Jim Crow. We have overcome before, and we have the power to do it again. Let's end the climate crisis by igniting a transformational new era where the government works for the common good. Go to arminarmforclimate.org. That's arm in arm, the number 4, climate.org to learn more.
All workers deserve fair wages, affordable health care, and a retirement plan that enables them to retire with dignity. All workers deserve to have a say about the terms and conditions of their employment, not just the bosses. With the Machinist Union's over 600,000 members having our back, Local Lodge 44 in Decatur, Alabama has been serving workers' interests for over 20 years. Our members have the best health insurance in the area with zero deductible plans. We set the bar for pay in the area with over $40 an hour rates, consistently averaging the highest non-college degree jobs in North Alabama with some of the best retirement plans in the industry. We can do the same for you. Together, we remain united, raising our voices to ensure justice on the job and service in the community. The Machinist Union is a true Southern union founded in Atlanta in 1888. We have been serving members' needs for 132 years. The longevity of our union proves our dedication and loyalty to the working class. The Machinist Union isn't just for machinists. We represent workers in government, healthcare, auto workers, aerospace workers, transportation workers, the defense industry, and woodworking. Our members even build the iconic Harley-Davidson motorcycles. If you're ready to get serious about better benefits and wages, if you want to have a voice in your workplace with over 600,000 members to back you up, call or email us today at 256-286-3704 or organize at iamaw44.org.
No intro music. Sorry, folks. I heard the intro music come on. You were talking to Warren, and when the commercial break come on, the intro music come on at the same time, and I was like, what in the world is going on? So here we are. Something with the producer. I guess he put the intro music at the wrong spot. So, hey, welcome back to the Valley Labor Report.
Yeah, welcome back, everybody. Appreciate you listening. If you want to call and chat with us, give us a call, 1-866-494-9866. That's 1-866-494-WVNN. This is the Valley Labor Report here with your hosts, Jacob Morrison and David Story. And I wanted to talk about these Supreme Court decisions, kind of walk you through what the lay of the land was before the Supreme Court made these decisions and what they did, and use that as another jumping off point to say what we say every week, like don't count on the government. You got to organize for yourself, and don't count on the government to help you, because they will throw you under the bus as soon as they can. So the first case is the one about the birth control and not having to and employers not having to put birth control in their health insurance. And so just to remind everybody, one of the things that the ACA did, the Affordable Care Act, was create a framework, a definition for what health insurance is. Like aside from health, like you're not supposed to false advertise. There are certain requirements that vehicles, for example, have to meet before they can be sold as road-ready vehicles. You wouldn't want to be sold a car under the impression that you can drive it off the lot and pay $10,000 for it and it not have an engine or transmission or something like that, right? Like there are certain things that a car has to have before it's a car. And so similarly with health insurance, the ACA had this bundle of things that had to be included before something could be actually called health insurance. Before that, they had these terrible bare bones catastrophe plans that almost never would help you unless there was like a catastrophe and they would call it insurance. So the ACA mandated certain things be covered under any insurance plan, and included in that definition is birth control. Why? Well, contraceptives as such are good. They prevent abortions, which is something that the evangelical folks are, supposedly they care about. They decrease teen pregnancies. They promote welfare for women. Just generally speaking, birth control is a good thing. It has a very positive effect on society. But aside from as a birth control measure, as a contraceptive measure, birth control pills are like genuinely healthcare. I mean, contraception is healthcare, but like there are physical problems that the birth control pill can help. And everybody in the audience knows that, like if you are a woman or women, like this is a common thing that so this is an important piece of healthcare. And but also it was known that some religious organizations opposed birth control. There's some churches that oppose it on principle. and the Obama administration had already made exceptions for churches and affiliated organizations to opt out of contraceptive coverage. There were no churches before this ruling that were made to get birth control for their employees. No, like, church affiliates. Like, that wasn't a thing that happened. What has happened now as a result of this latest Supreme Court ruling is that and additionally, 2014, I think it was, that the Hobby Lobby case decided that private, closely held corporations like Hobby Lobby that have like religious orientations don't have to provide birth control either.
Right.
And so there's all these exceptions already baked into the cake, like that if you're like a religious organization or a church, you don't have to provide birth control. What this did is now any large publicly traded corporation whose executives have strong moral convictions, quote unquote, the ruling doesn't even have to say it has to be religious, can opt out of the coverage as well.
And, here's something that needs to be said, because, and you continue to use the term, this is not about birth control for a lot of people. This is not about contraception for a lot of people.
As such, right.
I've got two daughters that both needed the hormones that's inside that's in these so-called, we need to get away from calling it birth control. We need to get away from calling it contraceptives. I've got two daughters that needed this medication to help alleviate their menstrual problems as teenagers. This is catastrophic.
It's healthcare.
Exactly.
There's no other way to talk about this subject. It's healthcare. And so the end result is many women are going to lose employer-sponsored healthcare. The boss will save money, and that's what this is all about. And workers are screwed yet again.
Yep.
Okay?
Yep.
I'm going to talk about the second Supreme Court case, and we're going to talk about like what we reckon you ought to do about it. But the second one was, I'm just going to lay out the groundwork pre-court case again here. So here in America, the great United States of America, folks in power, they don't believe that workers are entitled to much of anything from the boss, right? They reckon the boss ought to be able to offer whatever exploitative, horrible contract that they can get a worker to take. However, there are just a few worker protections that have been enshrined into law, making employment contracts that violate those norms illegal. Among those protections are those that are codified in the Civil Rights Act. Because of that act, employers are unable to fire or not hire somebody because of race, color, religion, sex, or national origin. And a later act protected people over the age of 40 from age discrimination. Okay? Much like the birth control ruling, there has always been exceptions to this rule. And this is a reasonable exception, I think. And that exception is the Ministerial Exception. And what it has always said is basically churches and religious organizations have never had to adhere to the Civil Rights Act when hiring ministers. And that's reasonable, right? You're not going to hire a Christian to be an imam at a local mosque, right? So that's a reasonable exception. I think everybody agrees to that. I don't think there's ever been a case that a Christian was mad they didn't get hired as an imam at a local mosque, or a Muslim was mad that they didn't get hired as a Christian minister at the local Baptist church, like that. And so this is long.
It's all dog whistles.
Yeah,
all this is doing is throwing some raw meat to the base of the far right. It's just to say, look what we won from you. Guess what? You already had it.
Yeah, you already
had it.
What this ruling did was expand that ministerial exception beyond recognition, beyond reasonableness. I mean, it's just absurd. The ruling pertained to two teachers whose contracts were not renewed. One whose contract was not renewed after requesting time off because she had breast cancer. She was 60 after her 65th birthday, and this is supposedly a religious institution that like cares about people. I mean, I don't know. A boss is a boss is a boss, folks. Like, they're not your friend. But the Supreme Court stated that even though the majority of these Catholic school teachers, they were Catholic school teachers, their instruction time, the overwhelming majority, was spent teaching secular subjects, because they spent what amounted to less than 3 hours per week on religious subjects like church history or theology. They were ministers and thus exempt from civil rights law. Just think about that. Think about that. What this ruling opens the door to is if a religious organization has you on as like a janitor or something, they can include in the job description, oh, you need to lead a prayer once a week, and boom, you're a minister and you do not get of civil rights law, which is just the bare minimum that workers have been afforded in this country. Just the bare
so much
bones.
For constitutionalism, for we the people.
Well, I mean, just reading the text of so much for just reading the text of the law. I mean, this is, conservatives, they pretend to claim to care about judicial activism, but this is just inserting ministerial exceptions, judicial activism for religious freedom, quote unquote, that's not in the law. It's not in the law. This is the Valley Labor Report. We're going to talk more about this on the other side. If you want to talk to us, 1-866-494-WVNN. Stay tuned.
You're listening to the Valley Labor Report with David Story and Jake Morrison.
The attorneys at Maples, Tucker, and Jacobs have stood with the working people of Alabama for over 40 years, providing skilled legal representation for your workplace injury claims. When you are injured on the job, it can be a scary time, but the attorneys at Maples, Tucker, and Jacobs have the experience to guide you through the process to make sure that you and your family are properly taken care of and your rights are protected. If you need help, call the attorneys at Maple, Tucker, and Jacobs at 855-617-9333 or visit online at www.mtandj.com. No representation is made that the quality of legal services is greater than the quality of legal services provided by other law firms. Ours are the first generations to feel the effects of climate change and the last to be able to do anything about it. The window to meet this historic challenge is closing. We're already losing our lives and livelihoods. Millions have already been impacted by climate change. We can passively accept this fate, or we can join together and take back our power. If we so choose, our best days are ahead. We have a legacy of coming together to face crises that threaten the very ideals of our nation, from the horrors of slavery to the depths of the Great Depression, from the spread of fascism during World War II to the rise of Jim Crow. We have overcome before, and we have the power to do it again. Let's end the climate crisis by igniting a transformational new era where the government works for the common good. Go to arminarmforclimate.org. That's arminarm, the number 4, climate.org to learn more. It's also supported by listeners like you. If you value the work that we are doing, injecting a different perspective into talk radio, and you have the means, consider signing up for a monthly donation on patreon.com/The Valley Labor Report. Again, that's patreon.com/The Valley Labor Report to support our work and keep us on the air. If you're looking for contractors with lower than average EMR and TRIR, if you need to supplement a workforce at any level for any amount of time, if you need iron workers that come trained and certified at no extra cost, or if you need workers from superintendent down to general laborer and you're looking to start work on a project, or you're unhappy with your current contractor situation, you need to call my friend Jeb Miles with the Iron Workers Local 477. They only work with the best in the business, vetted contractors, and can do all kinds of jobs from roofing roofing to steel and bridge erection, from welding to heavy rigging, from structural repairs to machinery alignment, and much more. They supply 4 of the 5 largest projects in North Alabama, so you know they're legit. If you need good quality, safe, efficient, diligent, and knowledgeable workers on your job, then you need the Iron Workers Local 477. Call Jeb Miles at 256-383-3334. That's 256-383-3334. Or via email at local477@bellsouth.net. And make sure you tell them that you heard about them on the Valley Labor Report.
News Talk 770 AM, 92.5 FM, WVNN.
Good morning, folks. This is the Valley Labor Report. Morrison here with my co-host, David Story. And when we left off, we were talking about these Supreme Court rulings. And so I just want to pick back up on that. If you want to call in, the number is 1-866-494-9866. So this ministerial exception, I mean, what it did was it allows the church or quote-unquote religious organization to define just incredibly broadly who is a minister. And that is I mean, it's just bonkers. Like these teachers, they taught secular subjects, and they did 3 hours per week of religious teaching. And like they were not made at the beginning of their, like they were not made to sign an oath that they were a Catholic or anything like that. Like this is not, they're not ministers. And so what this, like I said, what this opens up the ability for religious organizations or Catholic schools, which employ a lot of folks, is they can like add to the position of a secretary, like pray with people when they call, and boom, you're a minister. And now I, as the boss, I don't have to conform to civil rights law. It's insane. And then to make matters worse, on top of this, just to add insult to injury, another ruling this week stated that religious schools can take advantage of taxpayer subsidies and scholarships and grants, which when you bundle all this up together means that we, the taxpayer, are going to be funding institutions which are not accountable to civil rights law at all. Like, that's bonkers. That is lunacy. I mean, I don't know that I have any particular problem with religious school or subsidies in and of themselves, but just combined with this, the fact that now they don't know, almost none of their employees, potentially none of their employees at all, are going to have the civil rights protections.
Yeah.
The
fact that they
crazy.
don't have to follow law.
Yeah.
I mean, law that's been set in place for years.
Man.
The fact that they don't have to follow law, they don't have to pay taxes. Now, I get it.
And now
all
they're
of their
getting taxes.
All of their folks that go to those schools or go to those churches, they pay property tax. I get it.
Yeah.
Kind of like you said, I see the need to help some of those folks out, but it's such two-faced to say, okay, you don't have to follow the federal laws of this country like many other companies do, but we're also going to give you the benefits of being an employer in this country. I mean,
and now, you don't have to pay taxes. And you don't have to follow the law. We're going to just give you a bunch of money. I mean, on top of tax breaks that you get as a church and religious. I mean, man, oh man. This is just, it's lunacy. And I do want to say real quick, somebody commented that the Little Sisters of the Poor, that they did have to provide birth control. WVNN. And like that's not true. They didn't have to provide birth control. What they did was they had to say that they did not want to provide birth control, and then the health insurance would have they could go to the person directly and offer that contraceptive coverage. And so what the Little Sisters of the Poor, what their issue was, that they had to signal in any way that they didn't want to have to that they didn't want to give contraceptive coverage to their employees because in a roundabout way thought they would be contributing to their employees getting contraceptive coverage. I mean, it's just like malicious. It's just malicious. They were not asked to pay for birth control or for contraceptive health care out of their own pocket, but they didn't want them to be complicit in any way in making sure their employees get health care. It's lunacy. Absolute lunacy. We've got a caller on the line. Caller?
Yes.
Yeah. What you got for us?
Well, when I was listening to you guys talk about following the letter of the law that's been set down should apply to everyone, for half a second I thought you were talking about illegal immigration until I heard you mention the court case. So do you guys feel the same way about illegal immigration, that people should be following the law, and if they're here illegally they should be deported? Or are you selective in your outrage?
Yeah. So I think that following good laws are good and following bad laws are bad. And I think that's a general I think this is a general good principle that you have a guiding compass of like what do and I want to not do bad. But what I was pointing out was not what I was saying was not like this abstract philosophical mandate that people must follow the law no matter what it says. I was pointing out that these textualist, constitutionalist type people, the people that say that the abstract reading of the law and following the law is in and of itself a good, they are not following that mandate when it comes to things that they are not concerned with. Does that make sense?
Your co-host was actually very specific. He said black letter law. That's a very specific legal term. The fact that people should follow the law that are on the books. And basically just spit in the face of everybody who came to this country legally through the legal system versus people who have just crossed over willy-nilly and don't pay taxes like you're complaining about religious organizations or anything else.
Well,
so,
that's kind of a misnomer there, because most of the folks that do come here illegally, and I'll be the first to tell you, I do not support undocumented immigrants, unlike my co-host here. So we've got a very diverse host on this show. So whenever to say that they don't pay taxes is an absolute lie, because most of them that are here undocumented are using Social Security numbers to pay taxes under somebody else's name. So don't come on the show talking out both sides of your mouth.
Wait a second. So you're just saying that most undocumented workers, right, are using somebody else's Social Security number to pay taxes? I would love to know the research. I would love to know the research behind that. Because if they're undocumented and then they're committing fraud on top of it by using someone else's Social Security number, I'm sure your research is very accurate regarding that, right?
Go out there and look. I mean, it's all over the place.
They have this thing called in ITIN, an individual taxpayer identification number. That's not a Social Security number, and they pay taxes through that. I'm sure that there are some people that are paying taxes I'm not saying that like things don't that say that like use another person's Social Security number and pay taxes through that, which is like, oh no, they're paying taxes in somebody else's name. What a bad, what a bad thing. But most of them, they're in ITIN, ITIN. That's how a lot of undocumented immigrants, they pay taxes, and especially DACA folks. Like DACA folks are integrated into the system and they pay taxes and they do everything else that you and I do. But these people undocumented immigrants that have ITINs, DACA folks, they don't get any of the benefits or most of the benefits that you and I get. They can't access Social Security. They can't access Medicare.
And the point is, what Jacob was saying and what I believe in and what I'm saying is, the people that believe to follow the strict letter of the law, the constitutionalists out there, are carving out exceptions for people that they prefer, just like the left is, and I'll be completely honest with you, just like the left is, but the difference is the right is doing it under the guise of the left is doing all this and we're trying to protect the Constitution, when the fact of the matter is they're just as terrible as the left is about it. They have their pet projects they want to carve the law out for. The left has their pet projects they want to carve the law out for. They're both two-faced. So
basically, you're talking about a religious organization that is exempted from taxes because they're a religious organization, right? Mm-hmm. And you don't like the fact that, according to their religious beliefs, they don't believe in abortion, contraception, whatever.
No, it was We're coming up on a break. We're coming up on a break. I'm sorry. We'll address some of that on the other side of the break. Stay tuned. This is the Valley Labor Report.
You're listening to the Valley Labor Report with David Story. This is News Talk 770 AM, 92.5 FM, WVNN. News starts now.
President Trump's commutation of the prison sentence of his longtime political confidant Roger Stone yesterday isn't sitting well with a certain Republican senator from Utah this morning. Correspondent Sarah Westwood at the White House with a tweet from Mitt Romney.
The only Republican who is speaking out against what the president did last night with respect to Stone's case. I want to read you what Romney wrote. He said, "Unprecedented historic corruption. An American president commutes the sentence of a person convicted by a jury of lying to shield that very president." Now, it's unclear if we're going to hear a similar sentiment from other Republicans. In many cases, Romney is the only Republican to speak out against the president. This seems to be one of them.
Dozens of U.S. Marines have been reportedly infected with the coronavirus at 2 bases on the southern Japanese island of Okinawa. Local media, citing unnamed sources today, said about 60 people have been infected. New York State recording its lowest 3-day death toll average from coronavirus since the middle of March. I'm Christopher Cruz.
The attorneys at Maples, Tucker, and Jacobs have stood with the working people of Alabama for over 40 years, providing skilled legal representation for your workplace injury claims. When you are injured on the job, it can be a scary time, but the attorneys at Maples, Tucker, and Jacobs have the experience to guide you through the process to make sure that you and your family are properly taken care of and your rights are protected. If you need help, call the attorneys at Maple, Tucker, and Jacobs at 855-617-9333 or visit online at www.mtandj.com. No representation is made that the quality of legal services is greater than the quality of legal services provided by other law firms. People across Alabama are hurting. Elected leaders have bailed out corporations while sending only a one-time cash payment to working families despite record unemployment and a public health crisis. Hometown Action is fighting for working people across Alabama to build inclusive and sustainable small town and rural communities. Hometown Action demands that Congress pass a people's bailout that expands health care, sends cash payments to families, and invests in green jobs to restart the economy. Now is the time to act. Learn more at www.hometownaction.org. The Valley Labor Report is also supported by listeners like you. If you value the work that we are doing, injecting a different perspective into talk radio, and you have the means, consider signing up for a monthly donation on patreon.com/The Valley Labor Report. Again, that's patreon.com/The Valley Labor Report to support our work and keep us on the air. The attorneys at Maples, Tucker, and Jacobs have stood with the working people of Alabama for over 40 years, providing skilled legal representation for your workplace injury claims. When you are injured on the job, it can be a scary time, but the attorneys at Maples, Tucker, and Jacobs have the experience to guide you through the process to make sure that you and your family are properly taken care of and your rights are protected. If you need help, call the attorneys at Maple, Tucker, and Jacobs at 855-617-9333 or visit online at www.mtandj.com. No representation is made that the quality of legal services is greater than the quality of legal services provided by other law firms.
Local, state, national. It's the Jeff Poor Show. Weekdays 2 to 5 p.m. Only on WVNN. Depend on it. WVNN.
Good morning, Tennessee Valley. This is the Valley Labor Report. My name is Jacob Morrison, here with my co-host David Story. Charles, we lost you. I'm sorry. That was our fault. We're still getting a hold of this phone system. If you want to call back, the number is 1-866-494-WVNN. When we were leaving, the fellow that we were talking to was like, you don't want. You don't like that religious organizations are like exempt from following their religious convictions or whatever and not funding abortion.
This is not a religious organization.
Yeah.
They may be under the guise of a religious organization, but when you're an employer, when you employ people, you're an employer.
Yeah, and they're not being asked to fund abortion. Little Sisters of the Poor were actually not even asked to fund birth control.
Yeah,
and
okay, man, I apologize.
It's like it's incredibly important that like and with the ministerial exception, we do not these people. Okay, so the argument was that religious organizations ought to be able to follow their religious convictions and whatever, and like we agreed with that, right? Like people that are actual ministers in the faith, like no one reckons that you ought to have to hire a Christian to be an imam at a mosque. Like no one reckons that. Like that's not a thing that people think. What we think is that if you are a teacher or an employee in a school system, especially that is tax exempt and is now getting access to taxpayer subsidies and grants, that kind of stuff, we reckon you ought to have to follow the Civil Rights Act. We reckon you ought to have to afford your employees civil rights. But here's the upshot of that. And I do want to say this because like somebody said, well, take it up with SCOTUS or take it up with law or change the law or whatever. And like this is what we want to get through to you, to folks that are listening to us, to folks in the audience. We want to encourage you to do the opposite of that. We don't want you to count on the government. We don't want you to count on the Supreme Court. We want you to organize. Organize. We want you to have unions in your workplace where you don't have to rely on the darn politicians in Montgomery or D.C. to make sure that you have health care that you need. We want you to be able to get it for yourself. When you are in a union and you have your own contract that you're at the bargaining table for, it doesn't matter about the civil rights law, doesn't matter about the Affordable Care Act, doesn't matter about any care plan. That's what we're wanting to talk about. We're not here to carry water for the Democratic Party, for the Republican Party, for the Socialist Party. I don't care, okay? We want you to organize and believe in yourself and your fellow workers and get these things for yourself. Take these things that are necessary. This is necessary health care that we're talking about. This is fundamental civil rights that we're talking about. And we're telling you not to rely on the government. We're telling you to count on and believe in yourself and your fellow workers.
And
solidarity.
And if there's any workers out there, this needs to be said. If there are any workers out there that happen to be employed by one of the Catholic churches, give us a call.
Yes.
We'll help you out.
Yeah.
We will help you get organized. We will bring you to the table where you can negotiate your health care benefits, where you can negotiate your vacation, your hours of work. Call us.
Right.
We will help you out.
Yeah, and that's when I saw that comment, take it up with SCOTUS. Like that's I don't want you to take it up with SCOTUS.
That's exactly what we are non-political here.
I don't want you to take it up with SCOTUS. I don't want you to take it to whoever the heck, like I want you to do it yourself. I believe that you deserve it, and I think that it is better that the government mandates it than you not get it. But I'm telling you, don't rely on the government. The government is not your friend. The politicians are not your friend. Your boss is not your friend. Get it for yourself.
Yeah. We got Charles on the line. He had a question for us. Charles, you there?
Well, yeah, and that was really interesting. What I was wondering is the decision, leave it open for big corporations or anyone to affiliate themselves with a religion and hire their persons that are workers and call them ministers and bypass everything, get the tax breaks, not give you anything. Is that a possibility for a future now with this ruling?
Well, I mean, they don't even have the ruling the way it stands out. They don't even have to affiliate with a religion anymore.
Is that?
I mean, look at Hobby Lobby. Look at what Hobby Lobby has done.
That's about the birth control, and with the birth control, my understanding is that any publicly traded, any corporate executive that just says they've got a moral conviction about birth control, they're not going to have to fund it, which I think is lunacy. But the ministerial exception, religiously affiliated. Like, I don't reckon that Walmart can just say, "Oh, we're a Christian organization now," and make their tellers, like, I don't.
Well, part
I don't
of the
reckon you can do that.
Part of the tax exempt is going nonprofit with a 501c, whatever, 3, 4, or 5, what have you. So that they could. I mean, anybody can apply for the nonprofit, but they're not going to be able to pay their CEOs billions of dollars.
What about proving that you are actually, maybe you wanted to form a new religious,
that's
a
happened
new
quite
church
a bit.
or something? That could be open for just receiving all those things and not really having a belief pattern that necessarily conform to.
Yeah,
that's
I mean, that's a
possibility.
Yeah, that's a possibility, but you do. There are certain processes like we have incorporated the show, and we're working on getting a nonprofit status. I do paperwork for the local labor council, and so we have to do paperwork to secure our nonprofit status and stuff. And so, like, there's certain things that you have to do.
What he specifically aspect and what you've seen early on, before a lot of the medical marijuana laws come into place, you've seen a lot of people forming religions around that and using that to circumvent federal law with the marijuana laws. You've seen the Native Americans consistently use peyote as a religious practice out in the West.
As a ruling that could make for circumventing or gaining profit by such a move, and also not having to follow civil liberties laws.
Yeah, I mean, that's a possibility. I guess I haven't thought much about that. My main concern has definitely been with people in these, like, Catholic schools, for instance. Like, Charles, thanks for calling. We appreciate your call. But that's been a lot of my concern, because there are so many people in these Catholic schools or these extracurricular church organizations that are employed to do like 99% secular functions. Like, they are not a minister. No one in their right mind reckons that these people are ministers. And this ministerial exception has been expanded to teachers, and it does open the door. Like, how many other people are you going to be able to carve out? That's
yeah.
and you're going to be able. These folks, the boss is going to make more money. More money is going to go to the people at the top. And so that's my worry. Of course, there could.
What bothers me more than anything is the fact that the left is very outspoken on disobeying laws that they do not agree with, and I have no problem with that.
Right.
What bothers me more than anything is these people on the right that talk about the left so bad about, oh, look at all of this they're doing. They're ignoring laws, but yet they're going in. And they constantly talk about activist judges. The left wants activist judges. And what are they doing? This is exactly why do you think Trump has said we've got to have more Supreme Court nominees? It's for activist judges.
Yeah, and I mean, that's an important point. Like, I don't, generally speaking, like, folks on the left are not, like, couching their arguments in, like, oh, we got to make sure we follow the Constitution. It's like, no, we want to make sure that we do good things, and sometimes good things comport with the law, and sometimes it doesn't. And so, like, I'm just not terribly concerned with making sure, like, the law is like, it's not some, like, ultimate good. I think that there's a good in procedural justice and stuff like that, and I think it's good to maintain the rule of law, but, like, that's not my highest order. For people that are, like, these supposedly textualist originalist judges, like, that is their highest order. Like, I'm just calling balls and strikes. Don't believe this way or that way. I'm just calling balls and strikes, and that's all that I care about is balls and strikes, balls and strikes, balls and strikes. And that's obviously not what they are doing. They're I mean, it's just, and it, folks that are telling you that's they either they haven't, like, looked into it, or they're lying to you, or it's just they are activist judges trying to make sure that their
political
pet projects get pushed through. But again, like I said, when I saw that comment about, like, well, take it up with SCOTUS or take it up with whoever, like, you have not been listening to the show for very long.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
We are, like, it would be better that
the one thing that we've lost, or I'll say this, not the one thing that we've lost, that's probably a bad term, but the one thing that I've recognized over 40 years of voting every time the polls are open, of being politically active, of going out donating to candidates that I support, is it has made zero difference in my life. Zero difference in my life. I'm not making any more money than I was because of politics. I have better health care than I did because of politicians. If you believe that a politician is going to have a positive impact on your life, then you've bought the lie. Yeah. You have bought the lie that they're selling you.
I mean, I don't know that I would be that radical. I think that there are some things that some politicians have done that have been better than not. But the things that they have done have been pushed by people at the bottom, pushed by movements like Hometown Action, pushed by labor unions, and they've, like, basically caved to pressure that these outside movements have put on them. But, like, that is what we don't, whatever, a politician may be better or worse, and that's fine, and I think you should vote, and, like, I'm not shy about how I vote, but, like, this show is not about that. This show is about taking the power that you have and that you can have with yourself and your fellow workers, and using. So many people are not using the power that they have. They are letting themselves be inculcated into this individualist, it's all about me, I ain't got to worry about nobody else, and worrying about anybody else is not going to help me, and that's just not true. When you work together, when you work in solidarity, when you do collective action, these are the things that make the difference in people's lives, and that's the thing that we want to communicate. We want to communicate that your life will be better if you or union and you
negotiate collectively.
Negotiate collectively. You win these gains for yourself at the bargaining table. On the other, write your contract with your boss. This is the point of the show.
And that's not to say, let me clarify. And what you said was a good point. That's not to say that I don't believe politicians can't have a negative impact on your life or a positive impact on your life. A lot of the laws that are the legislation that's pushed out does have a negative or positive impact on your life. But the fact of the matter is the bread and butter issues of pay, of sick pay, of vacation, all of these bread and butter issues that actually have an effect on your family, of whether you can go to Gulf Shores every year, of whether you can take a vacation every year, those are the issues concerned about. Not some willy-nilly bull crap that the politicians want to tell you.
Right. This is the Valley Labor Report. We've got one more segment. Stay tuned. You're here with Jacob Morrison and David Story. If you want to talk to us, 1-866-494-9866 is
You're listening to the Valley Labor Report with David Story and Jacob Morrison.
The attorneys at Maples, Tucker, and Jacobs have stood with the working people of Alabama for over 40 years, providing skilled legal representation for your workplace injury claims. When you are injured on the job, it can be a scary time, but the attorneys at Maples, Tucker, and Jacobs have the experience to guide you through the process to make sure that you and your family are properly taken care of and your rights are protected. If you need help, call the attorneys at Maple, Tucker, and Jacobs at 855-617-9333 or visit online at www.mtandj.com. Made that the quality of legal services is greater than the quality of legal services provided by other law firms. The Valley Labor Report is also supported by listeners like you. If you value the work that we are doing, injecting a different perspective into talk radio, and you have the means, consider signing up for a monthly donation on patreon.com. Again, that's patreon.com/The Valley Labor Report to support our work and keep us on the air. People across Alabama are hurting. Elected leaders have bailed out corporations while sending only a one-time cash payment to working families despite record unemployment and a public health crisis. Hometown Action is fighting for working people across Alabama to build inclusive and sustainable small town and rural communities. Hometown Action demands that Congress pass a people's bailout that expands health care, sends cash payments to families, and invests in green jobs to restart the economy. Now is the time to act. Learn more at www.hometownaction.org. The American Federation of Government Employees, AFGE Local 1858, believes all workers are entitled to fairness, dignity, and respect. AFGE also knows that the best way to guarantee proper treatment is for workers to stand together, united, looking out for each other. In AFGE, we fight for workers every day to ensure a workplace that is safe and free from harassment. If you're a federal employee and to protect yourself and your fellow workers, call 256-876-4880. The attorneys at Maples, Tucker, and Jacobs have stood with the working people of Alabama for over 40 years, providing skilled legal representation for your workplace injury claims. When you are injured on the job, it can be a scary time, but the attorneys at Maples, Tucker, and Jacobs have the experience to guide you through the process to make sure that you and your family are properly taken care of and your rights are protected. If you need help, call the attorneys at Maple, Tucker, and Jacobs at 855-617-9333 or visit online at www.mtandj.com. No representation is made that the quality of legal services is greater than the quality of legal services provided by other. Good morning, Tennessee Valley. This is the Valley Labor Report. My name is Jacob Morrison, here with my co-host David Story, and we have been talking about those Supreme Court rulings, and we used those. We talked about those because we wanted to, there's at least one Catholic school in the area, and we wanted to, one, alert people to, the problems that they could be facing here in the future. Two, this is, an important topic that a lot of people are talking about, and three, and most importantly, we wanted to use that as another jumping off point to hit the point that we've been hitting every week. That's why we talked about those Supreme Court rulings, because we wanted to use that as another supporting argument for why folks should not be relying on the government to supply them with their needs, to make sure that their civil rights are protected, to make sure that they have the health care that they need. They need to be organizing themselves, forming unions, negotiating their contracts themselves collectively with the boss. And so we wanted, this was a good headline that a lot of people were talking about that we thought that we could use to illustrate that point once again. So that's why we were talking about that. And on the line, we've got Scott. Scott, what you got for us?
Hey, gentlemen, good morning. This is my first time listening on your program. I happen to be driving this morning and dialed into it. So, about the Supreme Court rulings this week, real quick, I know we only got about 5 or 6 minutes left in the session. The laws are in place, I believe, to cover things in a general way. But life is complex. Situations are very complicated. And when you start bringing in unique personalities and unique situations, sometimes laws may not be specific enough to cover a situation. In this case, with the Supreme Court ruling about religious freedom, I think it's not conservatives and the constitutionalists are trying to be hypocrites. I think instead they see where two competing laws are conflicting or seem to conflict in a very complicated and complex situation. So rights, which guarantees the religious freedom, and then we have laws that take that religious freedom and push them into situations and into general understandings. And then we have the civil rights laws that are also general enough that we still have complex and complicated situations that the civil rights laws do not specifically address. So in this case, it's not that I believe conservatives and constitutionalists are being hypocrites. Instead, we're trying to get a judge to help us understand which the two laws takes precedence. In this case, it was not a partisan agreement. It was a bipartisan ruling, 7-2. So that's a little bit more partisan and less specific to a Democrat versus Republican, left versus right, conservative versus liberal. And that's my comments.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. You said you've been picking it up this morning. I don't know if you was listening earlier, but the point that I was trying to make earlier is the birth control, contraceptives, things like that are not necessarily used for birth control or for contraceptives. As with my daughters going through teenage years, they had to have these hormones that's in the birth controls or contraceptives to offset some of the medical conditions they had with endometriosis and things like that help them. And what has happened now is the Catholic Church is going to be able to cut these benefits out of people that may actually need them. And that's not to say that they won't be able to get them. That's to say that they're going to have to pay full price for them, and they're not going to be able to get them underneath their health insurance plan. And what we're saying is, regardless of what the Supreme Court does, get in there and negotiate. Form a union in your area, in your workplace. Get in there and negotiate these benefits so you can take those back and quit relying on the government to decide for you and your employer. Because at the end of the day, I think constitutionalists, right wing, can agree that we don't want the government determining how our businesses work. We don't want I hear it all the time. I listen to WVNN regularly. We don't want the government telling us what we can do with our individual liberties, individual rights. So I think it is hypocritical. I think it's very hypocritical.
So my whole point was just taking exception to the idea that the constitutionalists seem to be hypocritical, and that's my whole point I was trying to make.
Sure.
Thanks for calling, Scott.
Thanks, brother. I appreciate it. And that's a reasonable point to make. That of course, sometimes you're going to have laws that conflict, and so you're going to have to decide where, what law supersedes another. And in this case, they decided that the religious free organizations to define minister in however beyond imagination is more important than the civil rights of the workers,
workers' rights.
Yeah,
workers' rights.
And that's what the decision ultimately came down to. The Supreme Court, and like you said, it was a 7-2 ruling. They believed that it was more important for religion that these quote religious organizations be able to define minister in whatever the heck kind of way they want than these workers' civil rights are.
And a minister is a minister. Come on now. We all know what a minister is.
Yeah, we know. We know what a minister is.
To call a secretary that does 3 hours of religious work, or a teacher 3 hours of religious studies, a minister, is sickening. They're employees.
Right. And I reckon that their civil rights are more important than the ability to define minister as whatever you want. And so that's where we come down on it. I disagree with the Supreme Court on that. I think that those civil rights are more important than the ability to define minister however you want. I think that there is a good common sense definition of minister, and being a teacher who does 3 hours of church history a week is not a minister. And I reckon anybody in the audience would agree with me, but for this Supreme Court ruling. But again, we wanted to talk about this to say that instead of relying on the government to supply your civil rights for you, that you should organize. You should
worry about the government taking care of you, or the government providing you with benefits, or the government seeing these rulings.
Yeah. Yep, and that's going to be the end of our show for today. We had a couple of folks call in after Scott got off the line, and I'm sorry, we just didn't have time to talk to you. Call back next week, 1-866-494-WVNN. This has been the Valley Labor Report. We will